Welcome back to Direct Edition, a podcast about nothing and everything. I'm your host, Dave. Today's episode features a chat with musician, singer, songwriter, multi-instrumentalist Liam Finn. I've known Liam for, I want to say, about 10, 15 years now. I first saw him opening up for Eddie Vedder on his first solo tour for the Into the Wild soundtrack, and Liam was promoting his first solo album, I'll Be Lightning. Liam's musical history goes way back. It's in his blood, literally. The son of Neil Finn and the nephew of Tim Finn, the legendary musicians from New Zealand, Split Enz, Crowded House. It is a family affair, but Liam broke out on his own, and you're going to hear a lot of different fun stories and just all these interesting things that I love talking about musicians with, but somebody I'm very familiar with like Liam. He has a new album coming out right after you hear this called Hyperverse. And it started as a COVID recording project where he was basically doing everything live on stream, putting together songs and writing them in real time. Liam's live shows are beyond energetic. So if you do get to check him out at any point soon, please do. And the last Crowded House album that came out last year called Gravity Stairs, Liam is part of the band now with his brother and obviously his dad. It's exciting to talk to somebody who's been around music for so long and is still just kind of like, you know, his career is just in its prime. So we talk about a variety of things. So thank you for joining this and checking it out. If you like what you hear, please hit subscribe. This is a huge passion for me as well as an output of what I do for a living. If you like comics, check out my comic book channel, West Coast Davengers. But I like to bring interviews in here with musicians and illustrators of all types and artists, actors, directors, etc. So hit the subscribe button, sit back and relax, and check out my chat with Liam Finn. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. Today's guest is somebody that I've been listening to musically for over a decade, somebody who has been playing music since he was a young child with the family band. You might know them. They're called Crowded House, but we're not here to talk about just the family band. We're here to talk about the man, Liam Finn. How are you today, Liam?
I'm doing very good. I've just gotten home from a home in LA from a brief trip back to New Zealand to start writing a new Crowded House album. So I'm just reacclimating at the moment and getting back into my studio and preparing for the imminent release of Hyperverse, my solo record.
That's
coming
right.
out in a month.
So that comes out in a month, but you just released The Howl, which is another album. I want to get into that.
It's pretty confusing. This whole process has been a big experiment in self-releasing and independence. I've always been an independent artist, but I've licensed records to record companies and worked with and alongside lots of different people. And this time, from the inception of how I made this record, I wanted to just do it completely outside of the industry. So I recorded the record. Well, I wrote the record with people viewing me on Twitch, streamed the entire thing from the moment of like just jamming, making sounds to having eureka moments to trying to write melodies on stream. It was a real weird but excellent experience.
Sure.
But that's kind of passed on through the mixing and stuff to now self-releasing. I've kind of kept out of the mainstream or the traditional industry. So that's why I found a way. I'm also trying to manipulate the industry.
Yeah.
You know, the algorithm basically, because we're all, as everybody kind of knows now, we're all kind of under the thumb of this really mysterious algorithm thing that's constantly changing. It's completely impossible to clock it. Yeah. So you have to try and keep up with it. And one thing that me and my manager, Dave, his name is Dave, great name, is this idea of waterfalling, it's called. And so when you upload a new song, you make it an EP or an album, and
Yeah.
the previous song that you released, and I'm up to song 8 now, so it looks like an album. So Spotify sees it as an album, but you put it. It's like this is its own release, and it means that when someone listens to your new song, it just immediately goes on to the next song and tries
Yeah.
to help you build that kind of connection in your streaming. So far on this one album, I've managed to release 3 singles, 4 EPs, and 1 album before I've even dropped the album. So
This
it's just
makes sense.
confusing. Yeah, it's confusing and stuff, but nobody really cares. No.
Well, and the thing is like you also still believe in the power of a physical release. You self-released 500 copies of the Hyperverse, and then the Record Store Day release just got was that like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So I know you're manipulating the algorithm, but at the same time, you're still releasing things that we can hold, touch, feel, and listen to, which is, me, I love vinyl, as you can see
Yeah.
from
Got
behind
the
me.
collection.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I guess I sort of see it as 2 different. I don't want to call them plights. Two different missions
Yeah.
that I'm on at the moment, and one is that I as you and me, believe in the power of music and the power of being a fan of music and
Hmm.
the things we get out of it. The most focus I wanted to give, on this record was servicing my fellow music lovers and the people that are already really engaged
Yeah.
in what I do, and so the highest importance I put into the music itself, the artwork, and I've made a music video for every song I've put
Yes.
out because I love doing that, and
Hmm.
I enjoy that process as a creative tool. So rather than pushing myself out there on social media and trying to make content and following trends, I just thought I'm going to focus on all the things that I really enjoy doing,
Hmm.
and then the separate mission is this trying to learn how it's all working in this modern day because it's changed so much since me releasing The Nihilist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even the last 2 solo records I released were in a real era of flux, and Spotify wasn't even as big a deal as it is now. Was more about, it was kind of YouTube, and it was I don't know, it was kind of a little bit of everything and a big bit of nothing.
Yeah.
So I never really sort of got my foot in the door on all these modern things. So I have spent the last year or so, and it's part of why I decided to release each song one by one, is because I knew I'd learn a bit as I went. So by the time the album drops, I'll be like, all right, this is what I've learned. I can give one last big push to a record, which in my experience in the past, you record label releases your album, and if it doesn't really stick within the first 3 or 4 weeks, they've
Yeah.
moved on, and you're like, but it's a new record. And so I'm sort of just, yeah, from all that experience, I'm just trying to create my new reality, and that reality is my hyperverse.
Well, and you took advantage of, like many people, you pivoted brilliantly during COVID and started doing the Twitch stuff and even put some of that stuff on YouTube, and you were live on Instagram every once in a while, and you were staying engaged. And that's honestly, like, as much as we tire of just talking about, you have to engage with your audience kind of all the time now. Um,
Yeah. Well, I love that the authenticity that you get from social media. I don't love the doom scrolling and
yeah,
like I've managed to remove it all off my phone, so it's not something I interact
smart.
with, but I still upload to it, and I still like Instagram Live because I don't like recording videos and then uploading, because you always, I don't know if you find this, if it's not live, I'll stop and start 1,000 times because
Yep.
I'll make a mistake. But if I know it's live, it's just it's for one, it's done, so you move on. But also it's just so much more authentic, obviously, and
Yes.
like you have to act like yourself, and if you make a mistake, it's kind of human and maybe has a bit more of an endearing quality anyway. So I think I like utilizing these things as tools, and it's the same with reframing the streamers as well, like Spotify. It's like there's no doubt in my mind that it's kind of evil and it's destroyed
Yeah.
a lot of what I love about music, but I have also discovered a few things through Spotify that I love now, and I also see it as a tool. It's just a shame that we're giving all of this hard work for free to all these billionaires, and that's what I'm trying to kind of dismantle a bit and go, all right, I'm going to use these things as a tool, but the real heart and soul of what I'm doing, I'm going to give to the people,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. And I know that the fans are actually genuinely want to find ways to support the artists they love as well. So I do think that we're on a little bit of a cusp of a someone had framed it to me as the plight of a middle class musician. Just like the top echelon are very well served, and
Yeah.
I don't know what a lower class musician is, but there's a huge gray area for people like myself who have a small but really dedicated audience, and it's just finding a way to make that actually a you know a salvageable career. You know?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, grabbing an audience in any way, shape, or form, and you've done it over just. I mean, your live performances are the stuff of legend. Even though you're still doing it, the legend still precedes you, and that's just one way to grab people and be like, "Yeah, here's the music I record, but come and see me live," and then you'll really be hooked because I can speak for many people, friends of mine, relatives, fellow, Pearl Jam fans that are like, yeah, go see Liam live because you'll never stop wanting to see him live.
Oh, that's lovely to hear.
I mean, it's
And I
true.
wish I could do it more. I mean, that's another sad thing that about artists at my level is that it has become continuously harder and harder and harder to
Hmm.
do those kind of tours. And it probably doesn't help that I'm getting older and have a family now as well. But just getting out on the road and doing the hard slog like we used to
Yeah.
is become between like Brexit and the UK separating things to Europe's made going between those countries a lot harder. The
Hmm.
current administration here is not making it easier for people.
No.
Whatever. You could talk about that stuff for hours, and I kind of love doing that as well. But it also inspires me just to find it fuels the punk spirit in me to
Sure.
want to to push up against it. Which is
And
kind of good.
that lives through me. I mean, I fund this podcast with my other job, which is selling comics on YouTube in a live format, and
Wow.
and that's the thing. Like when you were
Like you
saying,
read
no,
them.
I'm selling them. Like literally
Oh,
this
okay.
wall. I mean, I do read tons of comics, but yeah, that's my business. But in a live setting where I have a community of people buying this stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I just want to do that so that I can interview everybody across all the mediums that I like. And
Yeah,
you
cool.
got to find the thing that you're good at. But like you said, like the live format, it's more genuine. Anything could happen, and
Mm.
anything should happen. So I really do. I find a kinship with my friends who are musicians and do stuff performing wise because literally I'm doing it for 5 hours in one night. And
Yeah,
I
right.
start, sometimes I start singing and people don't leave.
I mean, so are you doing that like a live stream thing? Oh, cool. I mean,
Yeah.
there is a buzz that you get from it, and it's like
Hmm.
I always loved the romantic aspect of radio. When I was a kid, I would listen to the student radio station in New Zealand, BFM, which I still listen to now when I'm back. And it's like just imagining, especially something about nighttime radio or something, used to
Yeah.
imagining someone in a dark room, like getting lost in tunes. And you don't, I loved that there was a slight anonymous aspect about it, that you didn't know what they looked like or whatever, but you
Right.
had this voice and there's a connection to someone, it's happening in real time. You could call up, maybe you get on the air. Like you said, anything can happen. There's a sort of magic in that, and you can't fake it, and AI can't do it yet. And
Oh
like
God.
performing
Oh.
live, I still think humans really crave that kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
I think it's the slight danger of it. That's what's cool, is it's anything can happen.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not
And
pre-recorded.
that is the beauty of it. So I wanted to go back because obviously your musical history goes back because your family, you're around it as a young kid. For anybody that is unaware, your dad and your uncle are crowded created Crowded House. Your mom's a musician. Like your entire family is musically brilliant. But I wanted to ask, what was the first album or band that was like your own that you kind of like, oh, I love this and I want to do this?
Um, it's hard because there were probably different little pivotal moments growing up where I started reaching outside of what I was hearing at home. Because obviously I had all the musical education a kid could want in a Beatles sense and Neil
Yeah.
Young. But I think when I got to the point where I had my own little cassette deck and I was getting tapes, the first things that I remember really getting hooked on were Enigma and Ween.
That's two ends of the
But
spectrum right
they
there.
are, but I can kind of, I mean, it's the same era.
Yeah.
So it's two things that obviously Ween was like, I reckon must have been through either dad or someone in the band would have gone, you might like this because it had a childlike fun thing about it. And I
Mm-hmm.
was probably like 8 years old. And then in turn, I've got my kids into Ween. I've got a vet that, like, I'm surprised that I was handed Pure Guava as a tape and no one said anything. And this song's like Flies on My Dick and all kinds of really dodgy
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
But I was just like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then I don't know, I feel like every second kid of my generation I know responded to Enigma,
Yeah.
there's
That
something
song
about
was
that song.
everywhere.
Yeah, it was. And I thought actually me and EJ learnt that song up as a cover years ago when we were doing some summer festivals in Australia. And we thought, oh, this will just be the most killer like daytime festival tune that we can play because people will be drunk and we'll start this and everyone will join in. It'll be really funny and really good. And we did it and no one seemed to know it. And it was just me and EJ on stage going, and people going, what the fuck?
Yeah, what is this shit?
And then really bad lyrics in the verse, like the return to innocence.
Seriously.
Yeah. Anyway, it seemed like I still believe it's going to go down well at some time at a party or at a sing along or something. I'm going to pull out Enigma and it's going to bring the house down.
I wonder how often somebody sings that song and somebody says, "Wait, is that Enya?"
True. Or Deep Forest.
Yeah,
Is the
yeah.
other in the same little realm. But I still actually find when I'm making some dinner or something, I'll be like, I might chuck on some Enigma. It's got
Interesting.
a real atmosphere about it, that takes
It
me back.
does. It does. It really does. Wow. For me it was Appetite for Destruction. That was the first thing
Right.
that I got that was like, "Oh my God, what's this?" But then, we moved on to Seattle, the Seattle stuff, and that's when
Right.
everything opened up for me.
Well, I had that step in my evolution as well
Sure.
because I was probably quite little when I discovered these things, and the Ween thing I still think is is an influence because it was like two guys having fun with their
Yeah.
little home studio, and I'm a big fan of home recording, and I like changing the speed of my voice as well. I
Yeah.
think all that sort of stuff actually is really good inspiration. And then I think when I was about 12 or 11 or something I mean, I was in now and I look back, I'm like, I can't believe I didn't sort of appreciate how amazing it was that Crowded House were kind of having their biggest day in the sun, especially in Europe, at the same time as the grunge
Yeah.
thing. So when they were playing big festivals, they were, being either preceded or, um, what's the other, what would be the other
Post-seated.
one? Post-seeded, by like Smashing Pumpkins and
Right.
Rage Against the Machine and Sonic Youth and stuff. So I got to see a few of those bands playing at their first peak. I remember seeing Smashing Pumpkins and I didn't know anything about them. And I guess it would have been like in 93 or something like
Oh,
that.
wow.
And they came out and played Somewhere Over the Rainbow, but instrumental were just,
Wow.
full Big Muff fuzz. And I was like, distortion. Like, how come I
Yeah.
didn't know that this was a force to be reckoned with? And then later that night, I think it was, I don't know if I'm completely right, it was like Pink Pop Festival, and it was Smashing Pumpkins in Crowded House and then Rage Against the Machine or something. So afterwards I saw Rage and I saw the whole crowd moshing in unison and all yelling, "Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me," and going, cool, okay.
Right, right.
I'm going to use that when I get asked to clean my room.
I think every kid in the 90s used that and thought it would be smart to use it maybe in
Yeah.
a parental setting or a school setting, and
Yeah.
probably were very wrong.
Yeah.
So I know you started like smashing the drums when you were really young, but I mean, for my audience, Liam can play everything, and I mean everything. Where does the singing bug come in? What were you inspired by your dad, or is it just something that you're like, oh, I can use my voice too?
Yeah, I think it was kind of, it was understood that that's just what you do. I
Hmm.
guess I was pretty driven to be a musician from the moment I probably saw my dad doing it and identified the joy it can bring people and how much
Yeah.
fun it looked like they were having doing it. I kind of got the bug. And I mean, that's why it's completely nuts now then to be doing it with dad and Nick and, experiencing that through my childhood eyes. I'm like, of course I was destined to do it. This is fun.
Yeah.
But the sing, to sing on things, I don't know. I do think it was just understanding that, like, oh no, if you're gonna, because that's the way dad did it, if you're gonna make songs, you might as well sing on it. Because in some ways I feel like I'm a good singer, but it's not like it's my, I don't feel like that's the thing I'm the most confident in.
Hmm.
Um, I like singing and I love the catharsis of it, but it's still probably the thing I'm the most self-conscious about when I'm making music is the sound of my voice. And I think a lot of singers are probably like that anyway. It's like hearing
Yeah.
your recorded voice when
Oh
you're
yeah.
talking. Um, but it was just like a necessity. But had I found someone early on that was a singer or something, it might have been very different. I don't know.
Hmm.
But I
Interesting.
like Elroy. Elroy writes beautiful songs, and he's got a beautiful voice,
Yeah.
in his own way. But he's not as outgoing a singer, because maybe he didn't really. Again, he didn't need to, and he kind of was writing songs that were more instrumental focused and stuff like that. So it's interesting that these things just kind of evolve themselves. And I remember, like, learning, like teaching my friends to play instruments when I first started high school, and trying to play um, Tourette's by Nirvana, and it was an easy one just to scream and stuff. And my
Yeah.
folks coming down, and I was like, "Look, check this out!" And I'm just going and just like shredding my voice. And I remember the look on their eyes, are like, "You're gonna destroy your voice. Like, you haven't even got a voice yet, and you're just." And it probably did, to be honest. I
Yeah.
had a pretty raspy voice for the first early years of Betchadupa, and I still find, yeah, I don't know. You can think about these things too much, can't
Oh
you?
yeah. But
Oh,
I
if
mean,
only I'd never done
it's fun to think about
that.
it. I mean, it's fun to. I'm big into influences. I'm big into like kind of mapping things back. I mean, you can understand this. Like I loved, I liked the Who when I was a kid, but it wasn't until I hear Pearl Jam covering Bob O'Reilly and I start to really explore them, I go backwards and I start exploring music that inspired the music that I love. And so I just love, I love getting into conversations with people where we think about why we did the things we did, even if it's,
Mm,
it's always interesting to me. And then thinking about it's something you just said where I don't know if it really speaks to growing up in, where you grew up. You were born in Australia, but you grew up in New Zealand, right?
yeah.
Yeah. But what you just said, it's like, oh yeah, I was destined to do this because it brought joy to people. And I talk to people that are musicians that grew up in the States, and it's like, oh yeah, I took lessons, or, this. It seems that a lot of people in this country did not start music in a joyous place. A lot did, but it seems
Right.
that a lot of people kind of were pushed into it. And I
Mm.
love hearing you just be like, yeah, it brings joy to people. Why wouldn't I want to be a part of this? And
Yeah, it
that's
was
just
a
special.
pretty unique way to grow up, because from around the time I was born was probably just before Dad had any kind of actual tangible success with Split Ends. They were
Hmm.
still an art rock band that people liked, but they hadn't had a hit or whatever. And it was probably when I was, oh no, you know what? It probably is literally after True Colors was when I was born. So they just had their first, it was all starting to happen.
Yeah.
And so I never got to see, I only got to see an ascent, and it probably was really exciting. And that's a rare experience for any musician, let alone any kid of a musician, because I was lucky enough to get to go along a lot, and
Yeah.
Dad kept family close. I've learned in the last 40 years that a lot of our friends who are musicians who have kids either of a similar age or younger than me, their kids maybe didn't get, not all of them, but some of them didn't really get as much experience of being part of it because it wasn't as a done thing, to have your
Yeah.
kids on the road. And so I'm really grateful that I got to have that experience and got to be in a bunk on a tour bus and listen to Enigma and go, this is what I want to do one day. I feel like it's exactly what when I finally got to the point where I had my first tour bus on my own
Yeah.
tour, which probably sent me way into debt. I was like, it's all worth it because I finally made it. This
Rock
is
and
it. I'm going to
roll.
listen to Enigma in
Yeah.
my bunk. So it was a really, like amazing coincidence, or just amazing destiny that I
Yeah.
happened to experience that, and then formed this pretty unrealistic vision of what it might be like.
Well, because
But
it's always
yeah,
changing too. So
yeah.
you know.
Well, I mean, I don't actually think that I ever, when I started making music with Betchadupa and stuff, I think
Yeah.
I was a smart enough and self-aware enough person that there was nothing guaranteed, and I wasn't just going to have success like Dad. I probably was, self-conscious and overly sensitive about it,
Hmm.
not to be seen to be using his contacts and not having his involvement. I probably was unfairly would shut down any idea of him helping us out, and he was
Right.
respectful of that. And in hindsight, I'm like, well, it probably would have been quite helpful to have his input because he knows what he's doing. But that was part of um, the nepo baby experience, really,
Sure.
is pushing against it. But it all kind of makes sense, and it all happened the way it did in a good way. And it was an amazing formative experience with my first band because we did have some early success in New Zealand and Australia, but then we kind of took that and went to the UK, and then had the really good punishing experience of
Yeah.
being a young man in London, which is a completely it's a rough, tough, grueling country. And for a band trying to get noticed, it ultimately broke us up as a band, but also formed some pretty amazing memories. And like it was good because I think that was where I realized I wanted to do solo stuff. And then
Hmm.
when things started going better with the solo thing, I really appreciated it, and I didn't ever take it for granted, I don't think.
Yeah, and I didn't start listening to Betchadupa until after you guys were all broken up. But you started that band young, right? Like 14 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it seems that a lot of people in the kind of punk world who did that went on to have the solo career. It's like I feel like you almost have to do one to have the other. Like you said, it's a learning experience.
Yeah, and it makes you appreciate the ups and downs. I mean, you do see people get really successful on their first records or their first bands, and you can't help but go, oh, it's going to be tough when it doesn't going, because ultimately it never goes
Sure.
always well, and you you don't always have an appreciation for how well it's going if you don't have the other side, that you've experienced.
Yeah, I would like to, you kind of made me think about this. Maybe in an alternate universe, Billy Joe Armstrong, Green Day broke up when Dookie hit, and Joe Armstrong's been a solo musician for 25 years, you know?
And he's playing to 200 people,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
exactly.
you know, yeah. And
So,
people love him and think he's great, but that's the thing. There's so many factors in these things. And I think now when I turned 40 and had kids, it did really make me reevaluate what it was that I was doing. Like, like whether this is a vocation or whether it's actually a practical job, because it's
yeah,
not very practical. It's not,
it's not
it's
practical.
really hard. Yeah. So you got to identify it and re-identify it constantly, I think, what it is that you love about doing it. Cause that's the only way, I see anybody actually succeed is through a kind of a self, uh, barometer of success, not a public one.
Right, right. It's tough to, I got to imagine it's tough to separate those things, but like you said, it comes a point in your life, like you said, it was your kids and turning
Mm.
40 where you realize things like that. Um, everybody's got their own path on it, and music is, I said I had another interview last week with Rob Sheridan, who was the creative director for Nine Inch Nails, and now he's doing Pearl Jam's all the visuals.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we were talking about the music industry, and it's just like the music industry's worst enemy is the music industry.
Yeah.
And
Right.
it seems, people that were successful at one point, they make one, it's not even a misstep, something changes and they don't change with it, and you
Mm.
get left behind. It's terrible in that
Yeah. And also
regard.
some people, have, so much success and they're everywhere for a minute. And if someone who's working alongside them doesn't identify when it's time to maybe pull back and focus on the creative aspect again,
Hmm.
the artist gets worn out and people get sick of them. And at least that's what it used to feel like. It's hard to kind of make that second record if one's blown up, because the artist feels the burden of it
Yeah.
has to be as successful as the last, and that's immediately off-putting. And it's, you can't really fake it. You got to find a way that you're like, I think that's why people rebel, and I
Hmm.
certainly found that every record I've made is a response to the last one, and maybe isn't necessarily a wise move. Well, it's quite often people are hoping that you're going to make another one that's at least a natural progression from that one, but I've been pushed against that, and for better or for worse, and I still really proud of everything I've made, but I've certainly seen which parts were perverse and which parts were,
Yeah.
unnecessarily messing things up just to kind of keep yourself stimulated.
I was going to ask you about your first solo record, I'll Be Lightning, which you played pretty much everything, right? Like
Yeah.
there's not too much on there you didn't play. Like, what was your mindset going into it? You're just like, I'm going to write all this stuff. I'm going to play everything and just see what happens. Did you have a contract that like did you sign anything, or were you just like, I'm going to make this and then see what it looks like after the fact?
Yeah, it was exactly that. It was, in the aftermath of my band deciding to call it a day, or at least for now. We didn't really have a huge falling out.
Hmm.
It was a tense time in London, and I got a bit sick of feeling like I was the only one pushing it forward, even though the other guys were fully committed, but they were used to me probably being the power freak. Like I was for so long, probably the one pushing it forward. And I also was probably identifying that we were getting better and better at being the heaviest fucking band,
Yeah.
around. And I was starting to write songs that didn't want that. And it didn't mean I didn't want to do that as well, but I had all these quite introverted melodic sort of things that I had a vision for how I wanted to hear them. And the same, it was even a bit of a response to the experiences that Betchadupa had recording, because we'd gotten to work with really great engineers and producers. Like Nick Launay made our second record, who's one of my favorite producers, and Sam Gibson, who I'd grown up working alongside, was really great too. But I think through those experiences, um, I realized that there was something in these demos that I used to make myself
Hmm.
that I never managed to capture in a recording studio. And whatever that was, it was something that you couldn't put your finger on. It was some sort of unself-conscious aspect. It was a looseness and a rough around the edges quality that I liked in Sparkle Horse, and I liked in
Yeah.
things that, I was really into. And so I sort of went, well, I'm going to follow my muse and kind of do it the way that people have told me I can't do it. Because especially in that era, if you were on a record company, which I was with Betchadupa, you do your demos and you'd be like, well, I would actually be happy to release this because the songs come across. But the label's like, you got to go into a professional record, you got to
Yeah.
spend 60 grand on making this record or more. And so when I broke away from it all, I was sort of just not unlike the same headspace I got into before I made Hyperverse, was just kind of like, fuck it all. I'm just going to do it my way. And this is for me. I don't have anything to prove to anyone else. I just want to achieve this idea I have. And again, another incredibly fortuitous and privileged position is I got to go, and rather than just demo it on a 4-track, Dad was building his studio and all the gear was being stored up in this top room, which
Oh.
wasn't a recording studio and it wasn't sound treated or anything, but there was a Neve console and a Ampex tape machine. And I managed to get those connected together. And someone showed me how, I got about, I don't know, there's about 8 mics or something like that. And they were just out and they were going through these channels. And I could sort of just basically worked it out as I went, because it
Hmm.
was the same process as a little 8-track that I would work on myself or whatever. It was just the really good gear, and some really nice mics. And so it was a real trial and error experience. And I probably did a whole lot of stuff really wrong. I got told after the fact that there's lots of drums that are out of phase or whatever. And I was like, well, it sounds good.
Duh.
That was the
Yeah.
kind of thing I
Yeah.
went, there was this philosophy really, it was like, if it sounds good, then don't question it. It doesn't have to be technically correct. And that's what I think, that combined with these songs that had actually been brewing and being, a few years in the making, songs that have been sitting there, some of the most honest songs I'd ever written, the
Oh
most
yeah.
revealing songs I'd ever written. And so it was kind of a perfect storm of creativity that just sort of came together at the right time. And I went back down and spent, and it was, and it, I can easily block these things out because my memory of it is like it was the most amazing and romantic and easy experience. But I remember actually really struggling at times and really going, oh shit, maybe I need help. And I had a few friends, and actually Joel, who joined my band, who you would have met back in the New York
Hmm.
days, he was an engineer, but not like on the professional circuit, but he knew how to work stuff. And so I remember always really liking him. I didn't know him that well yet. So I got him to come in the few times that I needed someone to hit record and help me with a few things. He came in and we formed a little relationship. And then Matt, my old drummer from Betchadupa, was the only other person
Right.
that came in and played on a few tracks late at night. We did good all night sessions. We'd go out to a bar and come back, and we could make noise into the night. And so there was a few really kind of, almost biopic like moments, that
Yeah.
you're watching a movie and go, that didn't happen that way. But there were a few moments that did happen that way in that record. Um, and I sort of, and it'd be almost impossible to ever recreate that again.
Sure.
And so it was a really special thing that was captured there. And I think that's why it still is, really close to my heart. And a lot of other people
Hmm.
still love that record for that reason. And I kind of try hard not to compare everything else I've done to that, because it was I don't need to make that record again. I've made it, it's there.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, and the fact that it's like, I mean, not to be hyperbolic, but it does sound like there's lightning in a bottle on that record, and well, reflected in the title. But it's a nice. If I were to tell somebody to listen to it in the order, your discography in the order, it would be, yeah, listen to that first, because then you get a taste for all of the kinds of songs that are to come
Right.
from, but you're learning and you're creating more lush sounds throughout the rest of the albums that you've put out. Um, but it's one that lives special for me, and I love the fact that it's something I don't think I've ever seen anybody release anything like it. 19 tracks on the vinyl, and
Yeah.
and the CD only has what, 14, I think, something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah,
Which was long when I think about it now. Anyway, even 14's too many songs.
yeah, and
But I
19
had
is
so much
crazy.
stuff. I had so much stuff, and I think with the vinyl, because back, it was 2007 or whatever, and
Hmm.
even then was only the beginning of vinyl making its comeback. I hadn't managed to ever get any Betchadupa record printed on vinyl because it was so
Yeah.
expensive and no one bought it. And that was the first time that when I put it out there, and because I'd recorded it all on tape, I
Hmm.
even mixed it onto tape, and then I took the tapes back over to England with me where I was still living. And Chad Blake suggested a mastering place that I could take the tapes to, and I mastered directly from the 1 inch or whatever it was, or half-inch that I mixed to, onto acetate for the printing of the vinyl. So it didn't
Yeah.
even touch
Oh,
a computer.
wow.
So
Wow.
there was a really satisfying process, and so exciting for me because I'd always wanted to print to get one of my records on vinyl. So it was the beginning of that sort of, and then all of a sudden it became like, oh yeah, it's going to be on vinyl. It's only released on vinyl now. Like
Yeah.
I'm not even, so far I haven't printed any CDs of Hyperverse. People can get it digitally, but yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was quite a special time. And it is weird to me now, like when I look, obviously FOMO was the next record, and
Hmm.
that was I was pretty burnt out because I toured I'll Be Lightning for like 2.5,
Oh
almost three
yeah.
years, pretty straight. And by that point, I did have expectation from a label to come out with something else. And I did have a manager that was like, we got to capitalize on these gains we've made. And so FOMO was something that kind of, in hindsight, was quite a forced experience of making a record. And I ended up getting a producer to do it with me purely because I was not in a state to be able to take on a project. And had I
Hmm.
given myself maybe 6 more months to explore and stuff, maybe there would have been a more logical next I'll Be Lightning. But that's the way it happened, and it sort of tells its own story in its own way. And that's what brought us to New York, was that we kind of were
Yeah.
still on this wave. And kind of, if anything, I kind of wish we'd just got there sooner, because that was the next favorite little point of my life creatively, was being in New York and finding that studio that I had, and
Yeah, that was great.
doing those residencies was something that I always wanted to do, was play a residency and be making a record at the same time, so you could try songs out and then go back in the studio and with what you learned. And so that was a really great little era.
Yeah, and getting to watch that from all sorts of sidelines, front lines, whatever. I mean, I could tell that things were changing, and it was super creative because you would come out with an energy. Like, you're playing a show every week in the same venue. You would think, okay, this person's not going to come out and have the crazy show that they had last week. No, they're just going to do something else that's crazy, like have 32 people on stage and, playing all these great songs.
Yeah, it was really fun. And I mean, obviously we had the energy for it. Like,
Yeah.
I now, with two little kids, I'm like, how the hell did we train up, like, and it was all friends and stuff like that. And everyone was on the same buzz, but we were like, learning whole sets, days before the show. But it made for, like you said, it just made for a really memorable thing. And what I wanted to build out of it was, what I always saw John Bryan do here in LA, was that people would come along every week because they knew it wasn't going to be the same show. They were going to get a different show each time. And so it wasn't like, I've seen it once, I can miss the next, I sort of wanted it to be something that formed a little community, and one of which that you were a big part of, Dave. And we, every one of the residencies, the Murmurations, went from the first one being, like half full, or, not as many people, to finishing on a real high with a sold out show. And it always felt like, should we keep going? And no, but I was like, no, this is good. This is, pull your head in. But, I think we did do one extra one on the last one at Union Pool. I think we did the 4, and it was going so well. And then the album was about to come out anyway. So we did one extra one where we played the album front to back.
Yeah.
That was a good way to do it. And then sadly, the following year after that, I think I changed agents, and I tried to I wanted to continue this on whether I lived in New York or not. And then unfortunately it just fell through the cracks and never happened again.
Yeah. And I feel like
I did one in England.
Oh, did you?
I did, but it was kind of again, my goal was to pick the places that I liked playing the most and be able to do a month-long residency in each place, maybe 3 or 4 different ones a year. And the one that I did in London, I didn't know that the guy who had been my promoter previous to that had been bought up by Live Nation, as they all did. And nobody told me. And I also didn't really know what Live Nation meant at that point. And my thing about the Murmurations was that I loved it. It was like $10 or something, $15, and it was cash on the door. There was don't think there was pre-sales. It was like get there early, buy a ticket. And in London, it was like you had to buy through the website. There were like it was like a £10 ticket, but there was £10 of fees, and it turned a lot of people off. And it was only about the third one in that, because we were driving to Europe to play, for like, we were doing a Tuesday Murmuration. The next day we'd drive over to Belgium, go to France, play. It was like, and then down in Spain and drive all the way back and play another Murmuration. It was ridiculous and kind of taxing on all our friendships. It was completely fine, but it was full on. And then we'd get back and we'd be, driven all this way to get back, and the new show would have sold less. It was having the opposite effect that the ones in New York had. And we were like, what's going on? Why is this not, we're getting good reviews and people are talking about it, but it was literally just like a whole demographic of people that couldn't afford to come or couldn't be bothered going through the ticket fees and feeling like they were getting ripped off and stuff. And so that was the beginning of my, like, fuck this corporate.
Yeah.
Like, I want to just keep everything outside and direct to the people, it kind of is where I started looking into. In some ways, it's when I went onto a bit of a hiatus for a while and, regrouped and stuff. But so fucking thanks, Live Nation. They killed the Murmurations.
Dude, they ruin everything. I mean, I have put a pause on a lot of ticket buying because of, I don't want to support that shit. I'd rather buy like the vinyl. I'd rather go shopping on the artist's website and then buy a bunch of stuff and not have Live Nation take $75 for me.
Yeah, no, it is crazy, and it is a really sad, and look, Crowded House are at a level where we work with Live Nation because
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of one of our 2 or 3 options, and for whatever reason, it often ends up being our best option. But
Yeah,
you got to keep your wits about you. You got to make sure there's like this dynamic ticket pricing thing. It's just ridiculous
it
how they
is.
can, on your day of on sale to the public, if people are all trying to buy it at the same time, some people are getting told it's $400 or whatever, and it's not. We've put a cap at $100 a ticket or something
Uh,
like that, and these are big venues,
yeah.
but you get fans writing or angry to you going, $400, like, no
Oh
way. And
yeah.
I'm like, we said that it was not, and then you go back and actually crowd it on the first tour we did of New Zealand after COVID, where it was the only country open.
Mm-hmm.
We made Live Nation refund a whole lot of people that got done by dynamic ticket pricing after we'd said we didn't want that, and we made them pay everyone back because we were getting messages from people, and it felt like a little win in my
Yeah.
slight little, like, "Wow, fuck the man,"
Right.
but it didn't count for anything moving forward. Like, I'm pretty sure we've managed to not have it happen again, but I see that Robert um,
Robert Smith.
Smith went hard against it and stuff, but which I was really, admired him for, because obviously he's on a
Sure.
huge platform doing it and stuff. But it just seems like someone needs to take that shit down, or they need
It
to change their tune.
it, it seems to be a losing battle, and I have no evidence to back up the statement I'm about to make, but I do say it often. They have to be, between like Live Nation, Ticketmaster, have to be the two of the most powerful entities in the world, because
Yeah,
what they do seems to break most state laws in this country, and
right.
they're crossing state lines. So, don't come after me,
Yeah,
Ticketmaster, Live Nation, but I don't like you. Speaking of, I wanted to go back a little bit to the reason why I know who you are and saw you live, and a band that, well, a man that fought Ticketmaster, part of a band, but you were opening up for Eddie Vedder on his first solo tour, first 2 solo tours for the Into the Wild stuff, and that's where I saw you playing on this stage with EJ, going absolute ape shit for the first time. Um,
yeah.
like for you, what was that like? Like, obviously, you got all these new fans, all these new people listening to your music that still do today. Hi.
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
but yeah.
People that own all the records and sit in front of them on their podcast. No, I mean, it was amazing, and that experience was, it was right as I started touring America. It was like maybe the second or maybe third thing that we did, as me and EJ had only really been touring for about 6 months on I'll Be Lightning, and that all kind of happened pretty organically as well. Like, EJ just was
Hmm.
singing from the side of stage one night, and all of a sudden was in the band and touring the world with me. And then it was like in early January or something, just before we were heading over to the States, and I got a call from Eddie, who just had a really great New Year's Eve with him and Boom,
Oh,
um, Hawaii, and I'd sent him a live CD that I'd done the year before at
hmm.
Spaceland, which was the first thing I released over before I'll Be Lightning came out. It was like a live show that
Yeah.
a friend of mine, really good old friend Brady, rest in peace, put out. And it showed what the one man band thing was, and I hadn't explained anything to Eddie, and I told him it was my solo show, and he saw the picture, and then all of a sudden there's like, you know 180 BPM punk songs coming on, and him and Boom were like, "What the fuck is this?" And he called me, like, it was maybe the 7th of Jan or something like that, and he was like, "Man, I just want to say that CD you gave me really was great on New Year's Eve, and how did you do it?" And I sort of told him what I was doing, and he
Hmm.
said, "Well, I'm about to do my first solo tours. Do you want to come out and open?" And I was like, "Fucking, of course," like that.
Yeah.
And the rest was history. It was such a wonderful thing, and anyone that knows the Pearl Jam intimately, as a fan, knows that they're a big family. Their whole infrastructure is built on long relationships, and we were just so lucky to get pulled into that and really looked after by all his crew. We were, as much as we'd had a lot of experience of touring through our own growing up,
Yes.
this was a different thing where we were quite naive, but really got taken under their wing, and um, it just was made so easy for us, and also it was so encouraged to just do. It was never nerve-wracking at any point. It was kind of like go out there and entertain them, and it
Yeah.
was a great way to sort of find our feet in America and find out what works with American audiences, and
Mm-hmm.
what part of our humor works and what part doesn't, or what part you've got to really emphasize the punchline so they know that it's a joke. And
True.
I learned a lot. I learned a lot from it, but also fucking got loose as well and
Yeah.
made a lot of fans. And we had so many, like, just because it was a really great audience to play to, because it was people that like songs and people that like relatively uh you know personal and beautiful lyrics, but they also fucking like to rock. So
Yeah.
it was perfect for us because we were doing all that and we were singing beautiful harmonies, and then we were screaming beautiful scream harmonies. and
Yes.
and we had a few crazy experiences, because we quite often go out and sell our merch afterwards,
Mm-hmm.
and we were really trying to make the most of the situation. But I remember one show, I don't think it was in Canada, maybe, where we had to come out from backstage to come down to the foyer where the merch stand was this big, you know, um, like big staircase that was really beautiful and kind of lavish. It looked like some from a scene from a film. And we came down and someone went, "Hey, it's Liam and EJ." And the whole room quietened down and everyone looked at us at the top of the staircase. And as we walked down to the merch desk, everyone just, it was like a slow clap situation. And I was like, and we were both really stoned. Like we just really stoned after the show. And we're like really
Yeah, that
dry
you're like
mouth
just
going,
run
"Oh,"
backstage.
you're like, "Oh no." No, we
Just
came
turn
down and
around.
took it in and went and sat at the thing. And that's a very memorable little moment. But yeah, we met so many nice people and made a lot of really great fans that, like you're saying, like a lot of people still show up to this day and are still really big supporters. So yeah, it was a pivotal little moment.
Yeah, I mean I can attest just, for seeing that band since I was 15. There's not a opening band that I saw that I didn't become a fan of or didn't listen to because of like, oh, well, they're bringing them to me, so I'm going to enjoy it cuz they
They're
don't.
very thoughtful.
Yeah,
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 with
very
their
thoughtful.
selections.
Yeah.
And we have got the chance to do a tour with Pearl Jam as well in Australia,
Mhm.
in New Zealand. And the weird thing about that was when I first met my wife, she came along on the tour. It was a pretty good way to sort of court her.
Yeah.
It's like, come along on the Pearl Jam tour. Um, but that was what maybe this is not, maybe this is only interesting to me, but it that was on the what Lightning Bolt tour. And
Okay.
I'd say that Pearl Jam were probably the same age on that tour that I am now.
Yeah, it sounds right.
And that just buzzes me out, because I remember thinking, well, they're quite old. And now I'm that, and
Yeah.
I guess I feel old too, but I don't feel like, yeah, it just makes you realize how you're perceived by young musicians
Oh
now. And
yeah.
when I hang out with young musicians now, I'm quite conscious of, like, okay, I'm a veteran now. As I always call myself, I'm a veteran up and comer.
There you
You know,
go. There you go.
yeah,
Still up and coming, but he's been
yeah.
around a while. Yeah,
But I've
yeah.
been around and I haven't gone grey.
Hey, look, gray is good.
Yeah,
Um,
grey is great.
Gray is great. There we go. Yeah, and it's just something like I think the first time I saw you was it was Albany in New York, New York, and I went with Scott, and you remember Scott, and we
Yeah,
were just like looking at each other like, holy shit. And one thing you said, it's like American audiences appreciate the thoughtfulness. I appreciate the tongue-in-cheek humor that you've always kind of had, not just in your stage banter, but also in the lyrics, some of the song titles. Um, but the theremin, that was the
oh,
thing
yeah,
that kind of sold people on. Like, I've never seen anybody play a theremin on stage. This joystick-looking thing, and you're like a
yeah.
mad scientist. Where, I mean, when did you introduce that into your life and your music?
It was all around the time that I started doing the solo thing. I When I was living in London, the
Mm-hmm.
band was disintegrating. I started thinking how I had this Line 6 loop pedal for the past 5 years or something since they came out, and I'd seen John Bryan do looping, but no one else was really doing it yet at that point.
Mm-hmm.
It became very big. It became the new thing, or the
Yeah.
the instrument a couple of years later. But John Bryan had always buzzed me out with it, and because he plays everything, and I was like, well, I play everything, and I use the loop pedal a lot as a texture on recordings because but the more you add to it, the more it sort of glues things together, and you end up with this cool texture.
Mm-hmm.
And you can make things go backwards, or you can double speed it, or whatever. But you can also, I was using it to write because I'd be like, well, here's my chords, I can loop that, and then I can start. I don't have to keep playing it. I can start writing
Yeah.
melodies, and I can write guitar lines. And then I thought, well, I could do this live. So I booked a couple of gigs in London. I bought a child's drum kit for, £50 or something like that, and drew a face on the kick drum thing. And I was excited about this whole new thing. And I was also, I think maybe it was even the same place I bought the child's drum kit. It was in Denmark Street in London's like the main music shop street with instruments and stuff. And there was
Mm-hmm.
this one that I was in that I saw the joystick. Um, and I'd been a big fan. I knew what it was. I didn't know what it was until I asked, and they said it was a theremin. And I was like, oh, I'd seen John Spencer Blues Explosion play, and I'd seen him play the theremin, and I was like, that is fun. And that is also another part of this, like that's another thing I can do on top
Yeah.
of once the loop's going, I can do the drums. I wanted to find more things to play with.
Sure.
So I got it. And I think that it probably was even the first solo show I did that I had the theremin, and it was all a discovery. And I probably did it on Lead Balloon where I first was doing it when you saw it. It was probably that song where I realized I built this cacophony of this song, and I could go play drums, but I could also, before I got on the drums, which is the big crescendo, I could, strangle the hell out of this theremin for 30 seconds and really freak people out because it just sounded
Mm-hmm.
like complete mayhem, and I think I realized pretty quickly that the audience all took a step forward every time I pulled out another one of these things that wasn't, nothing's pre-programmed. It was all seat of the pants and all
Yeah.
dangerous. Every time I pulled out another little trick, it
Yeah.
was, step forward and I lean in, and I really saw that engagement level change. So I sort of knew that, it took me to a new place as well. Like the more I did these sort of wild sounds and drumming, my adrenaline level went through the roof. And then I realized it's like I got to be on a really strong amphetamine with no drugs needed. Like I was
Yeah.
just felt
Seriously.
like I was invincible or something. So it was after that first show I did with the child's drum kit, I realized I'm going to need an adult drum kit because it was completely just crushed and destroyed. All the hardware was bent and was barely holding itself together by the end, which was kind of quite good.
Yeah.
If I could have a fresh child's kit every show, it would be pretty cool. But yeah, no, it was a really great, again, it was all part of that discovery time in my life. And but the theremin was came up with me from the day dot.
Well, it's
And I'm only on my third one. Like the first
oh
two
wow.
broke pretty quickly because I was probably getting too loose with it. And also, if I went and jumped into the crowd to play with it, people thought it was a joystick and would
Oh
just snap it,
no.
like try and. So by the time I got to my third one, Geraldine, which I'll just grab right now.
Oh, we're about to see Geraldine.
I don't know if this podcast is a visual one. If
It
you
is. It
put
is.
out the
Yeah.
visual aspect, but well,
It
yeah,
is.
the Geraldine is third and the only one that's sort of lasted the test of time.
It's
Someone it's
amazing.
one of my texts at some point has written "red knob goes here," but I'm not sure why. It's pretty obvious to me.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
she's been through the ringer. She's the only one that's got an actual name, Geraldine. The other two, I don't even know where they are. I feel like I probably gifted them broken to someone.
They died before they could get a name.
Yeah.
It's yeah, it's something, I mean, I've seen some musicians, I've seen John Zorn before who does stuff on stage that you just don't know what's happening, you don't know what's going on, but I just remember the first time seeing that and then watching people see it at the, during the residencies in these small rooms and just like smiling, like looking at people seeing it for the first time and I'm like, yeah, I remember the first
Yeah.
time I saw that.
It's great that it makes people smile, like what a
Yeah.
cool thing, Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, now, yeah, now I've got my new thing's my headset mic. I play
Yes,
with a headset mic and I can go anywhere now. So it's changed my life in a new way where I can go and sit on top of the PA to sing a song, and it's quite good.
I was watching. I guess it was from an LA show that somebody shot a couple videos of you live with the headset mic. Maybe it was in New Zealand, but
Oh yeah.
how does that respond pretty well? Like, doesn't blow out at all? Like, it's calibrated for singing and screaming?
I mean, I've did quite a lot of research to find the right one for me, especially one that's going to not pick up as much of the drums
Hmm.
when I'm on the drums. I mean, there's always going to be a bit of spill, and it completely has destroyed my years of mic technique mastery. Because you can't, you always sing off and on the mic depending on your
Yeah.
dynamic or whatever, and which you can't do. But yeah, it took a bit of getting used to because I never used any monitors. I'd never been connected
Yeah.
to the thing, and through making the Hyperverse record and realizing that because I got some in-ears made for me when I joined Crowded House and just immediately was like, no, I can't do this. I need to hear the air. I used them when I was recording because it was great to not have to have any sound in the room. I could stay in time with the loops easier and stuff like that. And I realized making this record that if I'm going to pull off some of these songs that are kind of like really utilizing the loops and the drums and stuff, I'm going to need to have that level of accuracy. And
Yeah.
so I gave in and I was like, all right, I've got the pack now for the in-ears. And then I was like, what's another pack? I got another pack. At one point when I had radio signal guitar, like so I could go anywhere. I was opening for Crowded House. I could go play in the crowd if I wanted to.
Yeah.
I was three packs of RF on me. Like,
You were in a science fiction movie.
yeah, I really was. I was carrying an extra, 15 pounds or something like that of batteries and headpieces and stuff like that. And it is, it took quite a while to get used to because you all of a sudden, you're sucked into this world and you're wearing you've got a head attachment and
Yeah.
but I kind of, and I don't know, I just leaned into it and it's just nice. Again, it's another step of evolution to keep things fresh and good. And I've even been, as I've been writing in my room here, I've even kept the headset mic so I can go and play piano and sing. I can come over here and sing and just putting down ideas and stuff. Because I quite
Oh,
often
that's
would forget that first idea you have, which happens when I'm improvising on stage, is probably quite good. I
yeah.
never really did it in the studio because the mic would be over there and I'd be over here. And so it's
It's a
been
new
really, yeah, it's
new
been cool.
freedom. Yeah, it's a new freedom
Exactly.
when you're
Yeah.
writing. Speaking of Crowded House, last year you guys released, was it last year Gravity Stairs came out or was
Yeah.
it late 2020? Yeah, so last year Gravity Stairs came out and you guys did a full tour and I'm bummed I missed you guys up in Woodinville up at the winery, but it's like 60 miles from me and I just don't go to shows that much anymore.
Yeah.
But
Well,
how
hit
was
me up next time.
yeah,
Come
yeah,
on. I'll
definitely.
make it worth your while, man.
No, definitely. I totally, a little personal aside, like ever since I was a mailman during COVID, so I was literally out every day.
Oh,
And I used to travel for work. And like COVID kind of grounding me kind of made me feel like maybe I didn't need to travel as much anymore. And it kind of just like stopped me from going out a lot, you
right.
know? And so that's still
No,
left
totally.
over.
I think we're all still in a, response to that and
Yeah.
traumatized by it, and even if we've blocked it out a bit, I certainly couldn't believe when we were managing to tour again because I sort of thought for a while there I was like those days are through.
Hmm.
And then unfortunately for those first tours back in 2021 and 2022 it was incredibly stressful and we weren't
Yeah,
allowed
I
to see
bet.
anybody. We were in a bubble, and but yet some people were acting like everything was normal, so we were staying in hotels where you're trying your best not to get into an elevator with anybody, you're trying to avoid people, but we were
Yeah.
coming home or arriving and there'd be like a 10-year-old girls Barbie convention in the foyer. And you're like, great, a whole lot of kids. Like, fuck, we need to book out the whole hotel. Anyway, we were so careful for so long because we had 40 people's jobs relying on the five of us not getting COVID,
Sure.
basically. Because at that point, you had to cancel your whole tour as soon as someone got COVID. And inevitably, me and Dad ended up getting COVID on that first Australian tour, and we had to
That's right.
cancel 2 weeks of shows. And so it was a pretty anxious time, to be honest. It really, but I was at the same time those 2 hours on stage were something that again you were reminded not to take stuff for granted because
Yeah.
it can be taken away. But I know my folks are definitely like we don't really want to travel that much anymore, and I'm so used to it, but doing it with my family, we all still wear masks and stuff because it just even whether it does anything or not,
Who
I don't
wants to
know,
get sick?
it just feels like a good idea, you know? Exactly,
Yeah.
yeah, because I've had almost all of us have had COVID on the road now because now you don't have to cancel it. So we've done a couple of tours now where Elroy's had it, Nick's had it, I've had it, and we've all just had to stay away from the person. So it's
Yeah.
really weird because you're all in the
It is
band,
strange.
you get up and then, oh, I've got COVID, and Nick is such a, he always runs everyone. He'll run over because he's forgetting, and then see me go, oh, back away. And same thing when Elroy had it, they put some fucking, what do they call it? That, fiberglass, whatever
Oh
screen.
yeah,
So
little
it just
yeah.
looks like, oh, it's a sound. It was like, no, it's for his breathing.
Yeah, and I mean, like you and your brother have spent so much time together. It's like you used to just go near him, so it's like,
Yeah.
yeah,
No,
yeah.
no one's actually, when someone's got it on the road, it's never passed on to another member,
Oh wow,
which is
that's good.
amazing.
Yeah,
So we've
that
managed,
is.
the protocols do work and stuff. Oh, except for Paul, our percussionist, got it from Elroy, and that makes sense because they're both making the beats. I don't know. That makes some kind of sense.
They're making the beats.
Yeah.
So, so with the Gravity Stairs tour, it was huge, and the album is great. What I thought was interesting is you brought a song which ended up on the record, The How, and then you have it recorded on the Hyperverse. It's a beautiful song. It's an amazing song, and you've got two videos, one with the Crowded House song and one for your song, which are linked together with a wolf.
Yeah.
Yeah, that song. Like, is there anything specific behind that song? It seems to be pretty. I mean, it's a great song, but it seems to be important to you to have it now in two iterations on two albums.
Yeah. I mean, it was probably, if not my favorite thing I had made. Sorry, I've got a really, really squeaky drum stool I'm sitting on.
That's
I
okay.
don't know if you're
My
hearing that.
chair's squeaky as hell.
I'm not farting, honestly. It's just this chair. Yeah.
It's okay if you
Um,
are.
it was one of the songs that kind of came quite effortlessly and quickly out of these improvised live streamed sessions I did.
Hmm.
And I've got to go actually and find the little genesis moment of it because I've been there's a lot of shit to sort through, but I go through some of these old streams and I can find
Sure.
the exact moment that the song came to be.
Wow.
And that one was just the guitar chords you hear at the beginning of my version of it is the
Hmm.
first bit of the loop that I made and put the bass on it. And then it had an atmosphere about it immediately. And I got on the drums and I think I was just playing, krautrock like beats along to it and immediately just started singing the melody that became the melody and it just kind of came out of thin air. And I knew that was good. I knew it was like, well,
Yeah.
this is something, I could identify it pretty quickly. And I knew that even as much as that you could play those three chords over and over for 4 minutes, and it doesn't wear itself out. It's actually a very durable thing because of the atmosphere. But I knew it needed one other part. So I don't know whether I did it on stream or after the stream was finished. I kind of just found where it might go. And muted all the tracks, kept the drums going, and played those chords over it.
Hmm.
And pretty much what my version is kind of that first day of writing the song, all the rhythm track of it, the drums, actually no, I put some different drums on the B section, which I think I might have even recorded somewhere else. But anyway, what you hear is kind of all from that original Eureka moment. And it took a long time overdubbing on it, putting all the guitar things on it. But
Sure.
while I was working on it, I'd given Dad a whole lot of the stuff I'd been working on and kind of, not really thinking any of it was suitable for Crowded House, but he gravitated to that one naturally. It was probably one of the most formed songs and had a little summer playlist that he was listening to while on vacation. And every time that song came up, he didn't necessarily identify that it was me. He just kept on going, what's this? What is this one? Like, this keeps coming up on my playlist, and he really liked it. And there was something about it. And then he would go and look, and it was like, oh shit! All right, I got to steal this one for Crowded House, No, then he kind of just got excited about it and said, let's, next time we're in the studio, which was in a few weeks, let's try it with the band. And that was an exciting prospect because I love hearing what it sounds like. Crowded House have actually learned up a few of my older songs as well. We were playing I from the Nihilist on
Huh.
the last tours, which is a pretty psychedelic, trippy song. Not
Yeah.
something that you would immediately go, "Oh, that's a Crowded House one," but that was probably why he thought, "Well, let's learn it up and see. It'd be a really cool part of a live set
Mm-hmm.
for it to trip out and go into a completely different space."
Oh, that's interesting.
So again, it was like just he's always got a bit of a vision of where he sees the band evolving to and changing. And that song, he kind of did a bit of work on my demo where he cut it down because mine was full of guitar breaks and it's sprawling.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and he was like, "Well, I like this guitar line, so let's do popify this, and let's just use
Yeah.
that as a guitar hook." And we made a shorter bridge, and I hadn't even finished my version at the time, and we went in and recorded it with Crowded House, got it to this point where I was like, "Shit, this is better than my version." Which was the point. Dad was sort of like, "We're not going to use it unless we make it better than what you've got, otherwise
Right.
what's the point?" But I hadn't finished my record yet, so then we got to finish the Crowded House version. Then I got to go and, with everything I learned about that version, go back into my one and make my one better again.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know if it's but it's like, I got to take the bits of what I liked about what we changed for Crowded House, and also keep what I missed about the slight taming of my unruly version,
Mm-hmm.
and made what turned to be my version, which is a really, again, a very durable, nice atmosphere of a song. And
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
so I
it.
was really happy that it exists in two. It's even got different lyrics,
Yeah.
some of it.
Yeah. Some of
um
it.
so, which is really confusing to my publishing company, who are like, "Which one is it?" It's like, "Well, it's both." And they're like, "Well, we don't know how that works for publishing. Like, which are they, two different songs or?"
It's
And I'm
I
like,
never
I
thought
don't
about
know.
that.
Do your job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really do appreciate it because the Crowded House version sounds like a Crowded House song, but your version has, like the drums don't kick in until a certain part, and then it's got I like to think it's almost your signature kind of move, even though the fill's different all the time, but at the end it's got the way that the drums kind of fill,
Yeah.
and
Right.
the way that song ends. But that's you. Like I hear that and I'm like, oh, that's Liam being Liam
Yeah.
at the end of your version of the song. It's got some tongue in cheek. It's got some, it's got first you bark, then you leave, or
Yeah.
leave. Yeah. Um,
I'm glad you picked up on that. No one really
yeah,
does.
yeah. And the videos are both beautiful. And let's talk about the videos that you're doing for all the songs that you put out on Hyperverse. The standouts to me, How, and then Con Man is absolutely what, first of all, your heaviest song, end of story. And
Right.
that video is very much like the franticness of that song. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I wanted to make a visual accompaniment to every song on the record, and I kind of tackled it with each time I put a song out. I kind of was like, back to square one. Which one should we go with next? And it was whatever, I guess, evoked a visual or something that I would be excited to make something for.
Mm-hmm.
So when that one came along, I was kind of somewhat saving it, because early on in the process, I put a word out on social media, which is again why I think it's useful. I did a live saying, "Hey, I need someone to help film a live show that I'm doing here in LA." And a few people got in touch, but one person kind of stood out. I had a chat with and connected with, and an Australian guy called James Douglas Cooper.
Mm-hmm.
I think I always get his middle and last name mixed up, but it's pretty sure that's right. James Cooper. And he was sort of like, very quickly became clear that he was going to be able to help me with these ideas I had for how I was going to make a video for each song. Because what I wanted to do was shoot myself in front of a green screen performing every song on the record, basically kill 10 birds with one stone. One day of shooting every song, every instrument, just so I had it, because I was about to go touring with Crowded House.
Right.
And so we did it, and it was one of the hardest work days I've ever had in my life. I was just
Can't even
dripping with
imagine.
sweat. We did all the drums first, and I changed outfits for every song to make it look different. We changed angles, we changed lighting to try and give it different points of difference. And we shot every song on drums, we shot every song on guitar. I performed every song singing, and then sometimes without guitar. It was just like we only just got it all done in the day, and I think we had to cull a couple of songs that we thought we'll do something different for. Um, but I ended up with all the stuff, and the first one I cut from it was Living Daylights,
Mm-hmm.
which worked out really well with using the old video feedback loop kind of thing and trails. And then I shot that off my TV with a Super 8, so it didn't look digital and came out looking awesome. But
Yeah.
I was like, well, I want to do Con Man next, but how do we use the same style of green screen performance thing, but not recreate the same video over and over? And I'd been talking about how I loved the diversity of Beastie Boys records and how they had punk songs and funk songs and rap songs, and I also love videos that they used to make where it was just a low angle camera, whether it be fisheye lens or whatever, and them rapping down it was a really powerful thing. And Con Man has got a bit of a Beastie Boys shout,
for sure,
rap rock thing about it. Rap rock, God, that's a dirty word, isn't it? And I'd also had shown James how I loved the video for, I don't know whether is it Past the Mic or no, it's something off Paul's Boutique where it's all rotoscoped. I think Adam Yauch made it, where it's painted on the cells of the film. So they'd film themselves and he'd painted on top of it.
Yeah, that's how they used to do all the animated films.
Exactly, yeah. And so I was like, let's use this as an inspiration. And he went away, and I also said I had a few ideas of what I was trying to convey in the lyrics and stuff like that. And he started doing a bit of rotoscoping on my performance because he was like, look, the performance alone of just you with the mic is quite good to watch. I would happily just see that. And I was like, well, but I've got the drums and I want to get the fills in there. And then he did some boxing. It's kind of a bit of almost a diss track of sorts. It's got a actual story behind it and what I was angry about, which is why it sounds so angry. But he did a bit of rotoscoping on his iPad over some of the cells, and just immediately was like, yeah, that's awesome. Like that just looks like the distortion and the white noise of the song. And I kind of thought, how are we going to do this? Because my general go-to is like, I can get a lot out of not much by repeating things and I quite like looping video and stuff.
Yeah.
But he went ahead and cut a whole video out of the performance and rotoscoped the entire thing, like I can't remember what it was. I'm pulling this out of my ass. 7,000 drawings,
it's a lot
over the cells. And I said, I'll make the backgrounds then. And I just went and he was doing 16 frames a second or 24 even. And I was like, backgrounds are going to be 8 frames a second, let's be real here. Because I just got Sharpie and like colored in black backgrounds and then did colors. And then I was like, why don't I exploit my children? And I got my kids to color, and I was like, printed out a bunch of 16:9 frames.
Brilliant.
And said, hey, let's do some coloring in. And my oldest one did it for like 1 and it was like, this sucks. And he moved on. But my youngest is like quite artistic, and we sat there and I sort of set him little goals of like, I didn't make him sit there and color in thousands of things. Right. I did most of it, but I was like, why don't you do just different shapes? And so a few of the parts in the bridge, like the different shapes, kind of moving stuff, are all my 5-year-old at the time's, drawings. And it was really fun. This is the thing I like about making videos, is the bringing it out into the real world, physically making stuff, getting it back into the computer and messing with it, and sometimes printing it back out again and whatnot. Yeah. And slowly but surely we kind of finished this chaotic masterpiece that it is. Actually, James went and entered it into a few film festivals, and it won the Swedish Film Awards for Best Music Video, and we won Best Directors.
Hell yeah. That's awesome. Congratulations.
Sounds great. Yeah. Yeah. And we were nominated for that Los Angeles Film Awards too.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's we talked about age a bunch, but we grew up watching music videos, and like to see you keep the tradition alive, but doing it for every song, because singles don't exist, radio doesn't exist anymore anyway, and MTV doesn't exist. So you're just putting them up on your YouTube channel, which for anybody listening or watching, I will have the links down below. Go watch those videos. There's a playlist. You can watch them all. And then Hal obviously filmed on Hollywood Boulevard or Sunset Boulevard in LA, in a mask. Yeah. And it's just very much a simple premise, but it's extremely effective because it's you and you're making all these moves. Yeah. And it's just, movement is such an interesting art. It really is, like what you're doing. And so I do love that video. And I just want you to be so happy video is absolutely horrifying in the best way
Yeah.
possible.
Well, that was the first one. That was
Yeah.
you know, the first moment that part of this whole process, I'd got to the point where I was feeling a bit overwhelmed before I'd mixed the album, but
Hmm.
I had someone mix the first song, and I had someone starting to help me make this video for Just Want You to Be So Happy, and both the things I started getting back were great, and they were great people I was working with, but I just made me feel like, no, I need to see this through on my own with this vision. And so I went back in and started making the video the way I sort of imagined it, which is
Yeah.
horrifying, but kind of had the right spirit
Sure.
of the track, and then and mixing. And so I at that point I was like mixing a song and making a video at the same time, and then getting it mastered and releasing it. I was going to maybe do that for each song, but I got
Yeah.
to the point where I was like getting up a good pace on mixing. I was like, I'm going to mix this whole record now, like get it done so I can move on with my life. Yeah. But yeah, no, it's been a really cool process, and I think there's a cool little evolution between the first video and where we got to. The purple dress video was very much thrown together at like shot at Largo. Actually, I managed to get in there before
Ah.
they had a show, and I just got my friend who was willing to help me for free. Good shout outs to Elvie, um, to come in and just like we just went out and filmed stuff, and then I performed on stage, and we had iPhones set up to film the whole thing, but she had my old SLR camera, like one of the early
Hmm.
digital ones, and it had a look about it, and she was all shooting from underneath, which is a terrible angle that most musicians would agree. You get stuck with all these photos up your nose because
Yeah.
there's always the shots in the pit. But I decided to lean into it, and it's kind of about an uncomfortable thing, the song anyway. So I was like, let's have the uncomfortable angle for the entire video, and pulled it all out of the stuff she shot underneath because it just looked better. And again, it wasn't like it's probably not. It's probably the least good video of all the 8 that I've made so far, but it's had the most views.
I know it
On
does. I was looking at it yesterday. I'm like,
I'm not sure.
maybe it's the lyrics. Maybe it's because of the lyrics.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know. It's because the ones that I've put the most work into, apart from if you end up chucking money into YouTube promotion or whatever,
Yeah.
which pushes your numbers up, but I don't think it's real
No, I
numbers.
don't
I
think it
think
is either.
because I don't see any change in engagement and everything else.
Exactly.
So I've stopped doing that. I'm sick of giving out money to billionaires, and billionaire corporations. It's like
Me too.
I'm not. I'm just gonna let it be. If it only gets seen by 3,000 people, whatever. It's still out there in the world and will be forever, hopefully. And someone will see it at some point that likes it.
And I mean, maybe 5 or 6 people from listening to this podcast will go over and watch it, and
Excellent.
maybe they'll write a comment. Which, honestly, the way I look at it, it's the people who leave comments, whether it's good or bad, but they're engaging with it. They're listening to it. They may have an opinion you don't like, which it's humans,
Yeah.
but a lot of them have, are touched by it or love the song, and I'm very aware of that. I mean, that's why I created this podcast, to talk about the things I love, because I'm not going to waste my time about talking stuff I don't like or I don't
Mm,
love. Um,
absolutely.
yeah. Before we get going, I did want to ask, do you have any tour dates or shows on the books with either Solo or Crowded House coming up this calendar year?
No.
No.
um, no. I I would love to. I mean, look, there's going to be definitely crowded house stuff later in the year down in the southern hemisphere, I think.
Mhm.
But we're kind of obviously it's an off season for that band as we make another record.
Sure.
But also, I really would love to do some more shows around the states.
Hmm.
It's just finding um, someone to. I'm again. I withdrew from the full industry, and what I'm realizing is one thing you probably do need to book a tour as an agent, and that was what
Yeah.
they always said. I can book my shows in LA or whatever. If I go to New York, I can probably book a show. If I come up to
Sure.
Seattle or Portland or whatever, but it's just so much work, and I'm pretty stretched as it is. So if anyone out there is listening as a booking agent and wants to book me a tour, I really miss it, and I feel like it's also the missing factor in this process that to get my good message out there.
Yeah.
So you never know. We'll see. I'm in and out of the States this year. I'm here for May and a bit of June, then I'm back for September.
Hmm.
But there's not much time, and when I am back, I'm probably like, I get excited about coming into this room and just mucking around. So
Yeah.
we'll see. You never know. Next year, maybe early next year. But again, I feel like I've relied, and it's actually delivered very well, is that you put it out there online and say, hey, look, if there's any booking agents or anyone that wants to have, we could even book like lounge room shows, like
There you
that sort of
go.
thing. I've heard working really well, as long as it covers its cost. I'm not out there to try and make bank. I'd love to not lose money. That's the
Yeah.
idea. um but it's the same with things like, I kind of, with this record coming out, I'm really glad you reached out to me about coming on here, and I'm like, I bet you
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that are in the network of engaged fans and people that have been tuned in at some point along the line that now do quite interesting things with podcasts or online blogs or whatever. And if anyone wants to talk to me about this record, I like to talk, as you probably realized through a lot of
Yeah.
talking on here. I think I'm just going to put it out there again and say, because I could hire a publicist, but it seems like that money would be better spent making more music videos, just for my enjoyment level. But
Yeah.
if anyone listening wants to get me on their podcast, hey, get in touch
Sure.
through
Yeah.
the socials, I guess.
Do we do we
Probably
have do we have a oh, yeah. Do we have a release
ah,
date for Hyperverse?
20th of June.
20th of June. So maybe we can do another talk when the album comes out. And
Cool.
Liam, I always enjoy talking to you, and it's been so goddamn long. It's just I finally have this place where I can have these discussions. And like I said, it's fandom. And I don't know if you are ever a comics person, but fanzines, obviously, in punk zines have always been a thing. And
Yeah.
fanzines and comics have always been the connecting tissue of like, hey, you like this, I like this, let's connect, and let's, write an article about a book that we're reading, or write an article about an album we listen to. And I think in what we've talked about on the internet and the algorithm and stuff, it's just, I want to be connected with people about the things that I love, and I want to connect other people with these things so they can discover them just like I did.
Yeah,
So,
cool. Well, I've had similar from the streaming experience with Hyperverse. It made me get comfortable in front of a camera, either
hmm
talking to somebody or talking to nobody or responding to comments.
right.
Um, I made me realize I quite like doing that. And again, it's the same thing where you feel like, even if it's no matter the size of the platform, it's really nice to connect to people and
hmm
interact and have things in real time, have a reaction to things. So
Yeah,
I've often thought about continuing on the Hyperverse, whether it be making music or not, just kind of trying to keep a way to it's like bouncing off someone, isn't it? It's like
sure.
these conversations that we have, I've learned quite a bit from, and it'll inform the next step of what I do with Hyperverse. And again, I thought about how it'd be great to just even make I guess, for lack of a better term, a podcast where talking to other artists in a similar position to me
hmm
is the topic, and finding out what they're doing to try and navigate the shit show that is the modern music industry, and
yeah,
sharing some of what I've learned, and hopefully coming out of the conversation with a few new ideas each, a bit of excitement and inspiration, and then whoever watches it, whether they be a aspiring or established artist watching, get something out of it too. It's all part of
yeah.
the education. So you never know, I'll get you on my podcast.
Yeah, I would love that. You can talk about
Yeah.
whatever. I don't know. The one last question I want to ask you, which is literally an unanswerable question, but I need to ask it because you and your family are one of the many exports from New Zealand that have touched my life personally in creative ways. But what is it, Flight of the Conchords and Peter Jackson and all of these wonderful people? Is it in the water? What's the secret to New Zealand, and why does it produce such wonderful people?
Depression. No.
And
I
that's
don't
why
know.
Scotland produces so many amazing people too.
I think being so isolated, and it's a really unique upbringing to have, and a different perspective to have, and also probably not unlike the Pacific Northwest. There's a lot of rain. There's a lot of
hmm
time spent indoors trying to make something to entertain yourself. So
Yeah,
that's some quite good fodder for art. That's why a lot of good art comes out of the South Island, or Dunedin had that. The whole Flying Nun kind of sound out of Dunedin is got a similar darkness and depth to it that some of the Seattle stuff
Sure.
that does as well. And um, I don't know, but I do think isolation has a huge part of it, and there is an element of um, feeling like no one's ever going to hear what you're doing. So maybe you
Mm,
make something that without the rest of the world in mind, and that's quite a good tool for creativity.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
But it's
great.
probably
Yeah.
changed because there's a lot of new stuff that's getting quite successful out of New Zealand now, and I can't put my finger on what has created this stuff because it's obviously a lot in the pop world, and
Mm.
um, but I just think there's a lot of creativity down there, and it's a beautiful place. So there's a lot of inspiration to be had.
Thanks for watching. I was so excited to finally get to have Liam on here, and it's perfect timing with his new album coming out. If you did buy, you could have actually purchased this album already via Record Store Day. They released a limited amount. You can check him out on Spotify and all the places that we talk about as we listen to music, but I will link his YouTube channel in the description below so you can check out all these videos that he's done for these songs. Honestly, it's the best way to digest this stuff before the album comes out. And you can follow him on socials and all that good stuff. For me, I appreciate it if you do hit the subscribe button on whatever you're listening to or watching this on: Spotify, Apple, Amazon, YouTube, whatever, iHeartRadio. Reviews do help. If you're on Spotify, you can scroll up to the top, the header of the podcast. And if you go all the way to the top, it'll give you the option to give a star rating. On Apple, you can leave a star rating and you can actually leave a review. You can leave comments and all this stuff. All that stuff helps me get this out to more people. So I really do appreciate it. And I'll see you next week for the season finale of Direct Edition. I'll Bye now.